I need to read the skill files and check what names are already used before writing. The forbidden names from the file are Margaret, Daniel, Courtney, Roy, Helen, Nora, Theo, Clifton, Vivian, Brandon, Paula, Adele, Loretta, Garrett, Simone, Gerald, Evelyn, Renata, Diane, Stuart, Alice, Oliver, Carol, Bea, Fiona, Warren, Douglas, Penelope, Priscilla, Constance, June, Lydia, Nathan, Ruthann, Brianna, Narrator, Iris, Raymond, Lorraine, Eileen, Wesley, Wanda, Claudette, Beverly, Marcus, Cecily, Robert. New character names I'll use: Sandra, narrator, 63, Colin, son, Daphne, fake fiancé, Harold, hotel staff Bellman, Miles, Daphne's real husband, Patrice, Colin's friend. The moment I heard his voice, I stopped breathing. I was standing in the hallway of the Hargrove Inn, one of those old southern hotels with creaky floorboards and wallpaper that smells like someone else's grandmother, and my hand was raised to knock on the door of room 214, my son's room, the room where he was supposed to be getting ready for his wedding in 11 hours. I had brought him a tie, his father's tie, a navy silk one with a small gold pattern that Leonard had worn at our own wedding 34 years ago, and I had ironed it that afternoon in my room down the hall, smoothing out every crease like I was doing something holy. I wanted Colin to have it. I thought it would make Leonard feel present somehow, even though Leonard had been gone for 4 years, and sometimes I still reached for him in the dark. That's why I was in that hallway at 11:15 at night instead of sleeping. And that's when I heard a woman's voice through the door. Not a gentle voice, not a nervous bride voice, but a sharp, clipped voice, like a blade on glass. You need to disappear after Sunday. I don't care where. Just not here. I went still. There was a low response I couldn't make out. A man's voice, not my son's voice. Colin has this particular low rumble I would know anywhere. I used to hear it through the walls when he was 16, talking on the phone past midnight, and this wasn't him. I lowered my hand. The account number I gave you, you use that once and then you never contact me again. Do you understand me? Once. My heart was doing something strange, not racing, just stopping between beats, like it couldn't decide whether to keep going. I took one step back from the door, then another. A hand closed around my wrist. I almost screamed. Mrs. Hale! It was Harold, the older bellman who had checked me in the day before. The one with the white mustache and the kind eyes who had carried my bag even though I told him I could manage. He was gripping my wrist gently, like you'd hold a bird. Please, he whispered. Not yet. Come with me. I looked at him. I looked at the door. The woman's voice had gone quiet. I let Harold lead me down the hall. We stood in the alcove by the ice machine. Harold kept his voice so low I had to lean in. I know that woman in there, he said. Not personally, but I've seen her before. I waited. She stayed here 8 months ago. Different name on the reservation, but same face. She was with a man, not your son. A man named Miles Ashford. They had a blowout in the lobby right over there by the front desk. She was screaming at him about money. He was screaming back. We had to call the manager. What are you saying to me? I kept my voice flat because if I didn't, something in me was going to come apart. Harold looked at me steadily. I'm saying that woman your son is marrying tomorrow. I don't think she's who she says she is. I stood there with Leonard's tie folded over my arm, and I thought about Daphne. I thought about the first time Colin had brought her home. Last Thanksgiving, only 7 months ago, which had seemed fast to me. But I had told myself it was because he was 36 and ready. And I didn't want to be the kind of mother who pushed her son away by asking too many questions. I had made stuffed mushrooms, and she had eaten 3 and said they were wonderful. And I had thought, all right, she's polite, she appreciates food, that's something. I thought about how she had never quite let me in, not rudely. Just doors that stayed almost closed. Every time I asked about her family, there was a soft redirect. Her parents had passed. She was an only child. She'd moved around a lot. "I'm not much of a roots person, Sandra," she'd said once and smiled in a way that made the sentence feel final. I had told myself I was being too hard on her, that I was protective of Colin in that particular way. Widowed mothers can be protective, a little hungry, a little suspicious of anyone who might take him further away. I had told myself a lot of things. "Is there a way," I said to Harold, "to find out who she actually is?" He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, a printed screenshot, a little blurry, clearly from a phone. I looked her up after I recognized her. It took me 20 minutes. "I'm not a tech person, Mrs. Hale, but even I could find this." I took the paper. It was a marriage record. Public record, Shelby County, Tennessee. 3 years ago. Daphne Claire Whitmore and Miles Jeffrey Ashford. No record of divorce. I held that piece of paper and I felt the floor of the world tilt. I didn't sleep. I sat in the chair by the window of my room and watched the parking lot below, and I went through every conversation I could remember having with Daphne, looking for the seams, trying to find where the performance had started and where, if anywhere, it had been real. Colin had met her at the conference. She was there representing a consulting firm. She was smart, polished, laughed at the right moments, asked follow-up questions like she was actually listening. He called me 2 weeks later and I could hear it in his voice. That particular quiet excitement he'd always had, even as a little boy when something mattered to him. He was never loud about the things that mattered. He got quieter. I had a good job before I retired. 28 years as a hospital administrator, which means I spent nearly 3 decades watching people manage impressions. Patients downplaying pain, staff masking panic, administrators spinning bad numbers. I know performance when I see it, but I had not seen it in Daphne, or I had not wanted to. That's the thing I sat with all night. Not what she had done, but what I had chosen not to look at. At 4 in the morning, I called my sister Maureen in Phoenix. Maureen has been a paralegal for 22 years and she doesn't panic. "Read me the names again," she said. I read them. I heard her keyboard. Then, still legally married. No petition for dissolution on file in Shelby County or any surrounding county or any surrounding county. A pause. "Sandra, she would be committing bigamy." "I know." "Does Colin know anything?" "No." "Are you going to tell him?" I looked at Leonard's tie on the bed. "Yes," I said, "but I need to do it right." At 7 in the morning, I knocked on Colin's door. He answered in a t-shirt and basketball shorts, hair still flat from sleep, holding a half-empty water glass, and for a moment I just looked at him. He has Leonard's jaw and my eyes, and he looked so young to me in that moment, so completely unguarded, and I thought, I would do anything for this person. Anything. "Mom, what's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," I said, which was a lie, but I needed to get inside the room before I said anything else. "Can I come in?" He stepped back and let me in. The room smelled like his aftershave, cedar and something citrusy, and there were clothes laid out on the chair, the suit, the shoes, everything ordered and ready, the way he always ordered things when something was important to him. I sat on the edge of the bed. He sat across from me. "I need to tell you something," I said, "and I need you to hear all of it before you respond. Can you do that?" He looked at me. He nodded slowly. I told him everything. Harold recognizing Daphne, the argument through the door the night before, the marriage record, Maureen's confirmation. I put the printed screenshot on the bed between us and I let him pick it up and look at it himself. He was quiet for a long time. Then, "That can't be right. I know it feels that way. Mom, people have the same name. This is some kind of mistake. Colin." I kept my voice even. "Daphne Claire Whitmore. Date of birth on her driver's license is March 9, 1986. What's on this record?" He looked at the paper. I watched his face. March 9, 1986. He set the paper down very carefully like it might break. He looked at the wall. He swallowed. She told me her maiden name was Whitmore, he said, very quiet. I know, sweetheart. The silence that followed was the kind you don't fill. I sat in it with him, and I let him feel whatever he needed to feel, because there was no way to make this hurt less. There was only being present while it hurt, which is sometimes all a mother can do. After a while, he said, "What do I do?" "That's your decision," I said. "It's your life and it's your decision, but you should know what you're walking into." He looked at the suit on the chair, the shoes, all that readiness. "She's still married to him," he said. "Yes." "So if he stopped, pressed his hand over his mouth, took a breath. "So the whole thing would be legally void." "Yes." He nodded slowly, like he was counting something. "Okay," he said, very quiet. "Okay, I won't tell you what happened in that hotel room between 7 and 9 in the morning, because it belongs to my son, and some things are not mine to share. I will tell you that he cried, which he almost never does. I will tell you that he asked me to stay, and I did. I will tell you that at some point he called his best friend Patrice, who had driven 4 hours to be his best man, and Patrice came up to the room and sat with us, and didn't say a word for 20 minutes, which is the best thing anyone did that morning. At 9:15, Colin called Daphne. I stepped into the bathroom, I turned on the fan. I sat on the edge of the tub and I stared at the tiles and I thought about the stuffed mushrooms. I could hear nothing through the fan. That was intentional. When I came back out, Colin was standing at the window looking at the parking lot below. He had his arms crossed, holding himself together like he might come apart at the seams. "She denied it," he said, not turning around. "At first. Then I read her the date of birth off the record and she went quiet." He paused. "Then she hung up. Patrice, she hung up. She hung up. We found out later from the front desk manager who found out from housekeeping that Daphne checked out of her room at 9:47. She had already packed. She left without speaking to anyone." Miles Ashford, we learned much later, had been staying at a motel 12 minutes from the Hargrove Inn. They left together. Whether it was reconciliation or just convenience, I honestly couldn't tell you, and I found that I didn't need to know. The wedding guests were notified by text. Patrice handled it, bless him, drafted the message with Colin and sent it from Colin's phone. "Due to circumstances beyond our control, today's ceremony will not be taking place. Colin is grateful for your love and support and asks for privacy as he processes this." He is okay. He was not entirely okay, but he was going to be. I know this because I know my son. He is the kind of person who, at 11 years old, found a bird with a broken wing in our backyard and kept it in a shoebox in his room for 2 weeks, getting up every 3 hours through the night to check on it. He researched bird rehabilitation on the library computer. This was before everyone had the internet at home, and he made little splints out of popsicle sticks. The bird died anyway, and he cried for 2 days, and then he went back to the library and read more. Because that's what he does. He learns. He keeps going. He's going to be all right. That afternoon, after the guests had been notified and the venue had been called and all the impossible logistics of an unwedding had been worked through, Colin and Patrice and I sat on the hotel patio and ordered lunch. Colin didn't eat much, but he ordered coffee and sat in the sun, and after a while he said, "I want to know one thing." I waited. "How did you know something was wrong?" "Before you even heard anything. You were in that hallway at 11 at night. Why?" I thought about it. "I brought you your father's tie." He looked at me. "I couldn't sleep. I wanted you to have it for the morning. That's all." I paused. "I didn't know something was wrong. I was your mother, and I was in that hallway. And then Harold found me." Colin looked down at his coffee. "Harold saved everything, didn't he? Harold is a remarkable man. I should do something for him. I already left something at the front desk." He almost smiled. Not quite, but almost. 3 months later, I was in my kitchen making soup. This is where I do my best thinking, standing at the stove, watching something simmer. And my phone rang and it was Colin. "Mom." "Hi, sweetheart." A pause. I talked to a lawyer about Daphne, what she did, the attempted bigamy, the financial stuff she'd been setting up. He stopped. There's a case. The DA's office is looking at it. I stirred the soup. She'd already added herself to a credit account I had, he said. I didn't even know. She must have done it months ago. There's about $14,000 on it. I closed my eyes. But the lawyer says because she never actually completed the marriage and because I caught it before. He paused. It's complicated, but I'm not the only one. Apparently Miles has a case too. And there's potentially a third person, a man in Georgia. I put the spoon down. Colin, yeah, she did this before. Apparently. We were both quiet. Are you all right? I asked. He let out a long breath. I'm better than I was. I'm not where I want to be yet. I'm notter than I was. I'm not where I want to be yet. But I'm better. Another pause. I keep thinking about what would have happened if you hadn't been in that hallway. I thought about Leonard's tie, still folded on my dresser at home. I hadn't given it to Colin yet. I was waiting for the right moment. A different moment. A good one. You would have figured it out, I said. Maybe, eventually. He was quiet, but not before the wedding. No, probably not before the wedding. Mom? Yes, thank you. I stood there in my kitchen with the soup simmering and the afternoon light coming through the window over the sink, the particular golden light of October, and I thought about Leonard. About standing in that hospital hallway the night he died, the way everything went very still. About learning to carry things alone. About how you find, over time, that alone doesn't mean without help. It just means you have to pay closer attention to the hallways you walk down, to the voices through doors, to the quiet bellman with kind eyes who reaches for your wrist before you make a mistake. I love you, I said to my son. I love you too. I picked up the spoon. I kept cooking. I want to say one last thing, because I've thought about this a lot in the months since. People ask me, when I tell this story, and I've told it a few times now, to Maureen, to a couple of old friends from my hospital days, they ask me if I'm angry at Daphne. And the honest answer is yes, sometimes. When I think about what she had planned, what she was willing to take from my son, not just money, not just time, but his capacity to trust. That part of him that goes quiet when something matters. She was going to take that and replace it with a wound. That makes me angry. But I also think about the woman whose voice I heard through that door, and how sharp it was, how tight. And I think about what kind of fear or desperation makes a person move through the world the way she did, building fake futures in other people's lives. Collecting them like she was looking for something she'd never quite find. That doesn't excuse anything. It doesn't come close to excusing it. But it reminds me that the story is complicated, that most stories are. What I know is this. My son is here. He is paying off $14,000 of debt that isn't really his, which is unfair and slow and exhausting. But he's doing it. He went back to work. He calls me on Sundays. He is learning, the way he always learns, carefully, and then, eventually, freely. And one of these days, I'm going to drive up to his apartment and bring him his father's tie, not for a wedding, just to have it. Just because it was Leonard's and now it should be his. That's all. That's enough. I've been thinking about cause and effect a lot lately, not in any mystical sense. Just the plain, ordinary truth that what we do tends to come back around. Daphne built something on a foundation of lies. A fake identity, a fake future, a fake version of love. And the whole structure collapsed the moment one honest man with kind eyes recognized her face in a hotel hallway. That's not magic, that's just math. What strikes me most when I look back on that night is how many small decisions had to line up for the truth to come out when it did. I couldn't sleep, so I ironed a tie. I wanted Colin to have something of his father's, So I walked down that hallway. Harold had worked the front desk 8 months ago when Daphne and Miles fought in the lobby, so he remembered her face. None of those things were planned. All of them mattered. I think about that when people ask me what the lesson is. I don't think there's one clean lesson, but if I had to name something, I'd say this: pay attention. Not suspiciously, not anxiously, just pay attention to the people you love. Pay attention to the things that don't quite fit. Pay attention to the things that don't quite fit. Pay attention to your own unease, even when you can't explain it. I had felt something off about Daphne for months. I had talked myself out of it, told myself I was being a protective mother, told myself I was projecting, and I was partly right. I am a protective mother. But I was also right about her. Trusting your own perception is an act of courage, especially when the people around you seem happy and you don't want to be the one who disrupts that. But love without honesty isn't love, it's just comfort. And comfort that's built on a lie will eventually cost you more than the truth ever would have. Colin is rebuilding. Slowly, the way he does everything that matters to him, carefully, then freely. He's paying off debt that isn't his fault, working through a betrayal that went deeper than money, learning to trust his own judgment again after someone spent months deliberately undermining it. That takes time. It takes the kind of quiet, unglamorous persistence that nobody makes videos about. But I watch him doing it and I think, that is what integrity looks like. Not the dramatic moment when the truth comes out. The long, ordinary weeks after when you keep going anyway. And Harold. I keep coming back to Harold. He could have said nothing. He recognized her, had his suspicion, and could have decided it wasn't his business. Most people would have. Instead, he reached out and grabbed the wrist of a woman he'd met once, and he said, "Wait." That one word changed everything. I think that's what decency actually looks like in practice. Not grand gestures. Just a willingness to say something when saying something costs you a little. When it would be easier to stay quiet and let whatever happen. I'm 63 years old. I've buried a husband. I've made mistakes I can't undo and choices I'd make differently now. What I know is that the people who shape your life aren't always the ones you expect. Sometimes it's the bellman with the white mustache who hands you a blurry screenshot at midnight and says, "I thought you should know. Pay attention. Be honest. Keep going." That's all I've got. That's always been enough.